In a world where people shout to be heard and compete for attention with flashy displays of strength, few realize that weakness isn't loud, it's quiet. It's not in what someone says, but in how they react. It slips out in moments they don't expect. You see it when someone loses control, chases approval, or refuses to take ownership of their life. And true strength? It doesn't advertise itself. It doesn't chase respect. It simply is. The Stoics knew this better than anyone. They taught that real power isn't in controlling others, it's in controlling yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Today, we begin exploring how 3 hidden behaviors instantly expose a weak person, starting with the most common and the most dangerous, emotional reactivity. Scene 1, a cafe, a spill, and a storm. Imagine this, a quiet cafe, mid-afternoon. A young man, probably in his 30s, sits with his laptop, working hard. A barista accidentally knocks over his coffee. It spills over his papers. What happens next? He slams the table. His voice rises. Everyone looks. He curses the barista, waves his hands, and demands compensation, not because of the damage, but because of the ego wound. His pride was touched. He didn't just lose coffee, he lost control. But across the room, another customer sees it all. An older gentleman. He watches, silent, and sips his own coffee. Years ago, he might have reacted the same way. But age taught him something. If your peace can be stolen by a paper cup, you were never truly at peace. Scene 2, the invisible trigger. Weakness shows itself in how quickly a person gives up their center. A joke they don't like? Rage. A disagreement? War. A delay in traffic? Instant meltdown. They're not reacting to reality, they're reacting to their interpretation of it. Every moment becomes a personal attack. And the moment you allow outside events to hijack your emotions, you become a puppet, pulled by every string the world tugs. The Stoic, however, sees the trigger and pauses. He knows the space between the trigger and the response is where power lives. Not silence that suppresses, but silence that chooses. Scene 3, the stillness of the strong. Marcus Aurelius didn't write in palaces surrounded by comfort. He wrote in tents during war. When people complained, panicked, or lashed out, he wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." In other words, it's not what happens. It's how you see it. The strong don't deny emotions, they feel them deeply. But they respond intentionally. Anger might rise, but they let it pass like clouds over a mountain. That stillness, that restraint, is their advantage. Why? Because most people are predictable. Insult them, and they bark. Praise them, and they smile. But the strong, you can't move them that easily. They are grounded in principle, not in praise. Scene 4, when weakness looks like strength. Sometimes, the most reactive people appear confident. They wear power suits, drive fast cars, speak loudly in meetings. But underneath the image is a ticking time bomb. Say the wrong thing, and they explode. Question their opinion, and they attack. They need to be right. They need to dominate. They confuse volume with strength. But real strength? It's in the man who listens more than he speaks. In the woman who doesn't need to defend herself because her actions already speak. In the leader who remains calm when the room erupts. Weakness needs the last word. Strength doesn't need to speak at all. Scene 5, the test. Ask yourself, can someone offend you easily? Do you feel the need to respond to every insult? Do you replay arguments in your head for hours? If yes, you're not broken, you're just human. But the goal of Stoicism isn't to feel nothing. It's to train your response. To let the noise stay outside while you stay calm inside. Every day offers a test. A rude comment. A delay. A disagreement. How you handle it determines who you are becoming, the reactive or the reasoned. In today's world, it's easy to confuse attention with value. The number of likes, followers, or compliments we receive can feel like a reflection of our worth. But the Stoics saw it differently. They warned that a person who constantly needs validation is not strong, they are dependent. Their sense of self is borrowed, not built. And this craving to be liked, it slowly eats away at your dignity. Scene 1, the chameleon. There's a young woman named Lily. Smart, capable, and charming. But she's always shifting. In front of her boss, she speaks formally and agrees with everything. With friends, she talks differently, adopting their slang and preferences. On social media, she paints a picture of perfection, filters, smiles, curated captions. Every interaction is an act, a performance. She doesn't even realize she's doing it. But behind the scenes, there's anxiety. What if they don't like me? What if I say the wrong thing? This is not confidence. It's camouflage. Scene 2, Seneca's warning. Seneca once wrote, "The approval of others is a poor substitute for self-respect." That line hits hard. Because when you're obsessed with being liked, you'll abandon your values just to fit in. You'll say yes when you mean no. You'll laugh when something isn't funny. You'll become a stranger to yourself. The Stoic, on the other hand, doesn't ignore others, but he doesn't depend on them either. He stands rooted in who he is, not who he is around. That quiet inner confidence? That's what makes him magnetic. Scene 3, the dangerous cost of approval. People who crave approval often go unnoticed, not because they're invisible, but because they disappear into whoever they're around. They give away pieces of themselves for temporary acceptance. And the result is predictable: burnout, resentment, and confusion. They don't know who they are anymore. Worse, this pattern bleeds into relationships. Constantly asking, "Do you still like me? Are you mad? Was that okay?" sounds innocent, but it drains respect. The other person feels like they're walking on eggshells. Like they're responsible for your identity. But confidence, real confidence, doesn't ask for constant reassurance. It radiates in silence. Scene 4, the room test. Walk into a room and ask yourself, do you need to be noticed? Most people walk in hoping to be liked. But the Stoic walks in knowing who he is. He doesn't shrink. He doesn't puff up. He's simply there. Present. Grounded. People sense that. Because in a world full of performers, the authentic person stands out. Not by acting louder, but by being still. You don't need to be everyone's favorite. You need to be your own anchor. Scene 5, building inner approval. So how do you escape the trap? Start by asking, would I still do this if nobody noticed? Would you dress the same? Say the same thing? Chase the same goals? Then, practice doing things for their own sake, not for applause. Speak honestly, even if it risks disapproval. Sit in silence rather than fake a laugh. Stop refreshing for likes and start asking, did I live by my principles today? Because when your approval comes from within, no one can take it away. Some people never look in the mirror. They look out the window, blaming the weather, blaming the traffic, blaming their childhood, their boss, the government, fate. Everyone and everything becomes the reason for why their life isn't what it should be. But the Stoics had a word for this kind of thinking: weakness. Because true strength begins the moment you stop pointing fingers and start owning your role in the story. Scene 1, the man who waited. There's a man named Carl. He's 42. Still living in the same town he grew up in. He once dreamed of starting a business, traveling the world, writing a book. But ask him what happened, and you'll hear this. I couldn't get funding. My ex didn't support me. The economy collapsed. I had to take care of my family. It wasn't the right time. It never is. What Carl doesn't realize is that he's been waiting for life to make the first move, when all along, life was waiting on him. Scene 2, the Epictetus mindset. Epictetus, who was born a slave, understood something most free men never do. He said, don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace. Read that again. The Stoics never claimed you could control everything. In fact, they assumed you couldn't. But they also believed this: you always have the power to respond, to adapt, to decide, to rise. And that's where freedom lives. Not in controlling outcomes, but in owning your role, your response, your choices. Scene 3, the blame reflex. Blaming others is easy. It feels good, in the moment. It makes us feel like victims of bad luck or unfair treatment. But here's the hidden cost: when you give away blame, you also give away power. If it's always someone else's fault, then you're always stuck. You'll wait for your parents to apologize before healing. Wait for a boss to change before improving. Wait for the world to become fair before acting. And meanwhile, life passes by, while you sit in the passenger seat. The Stoics sat in no one's passenger seat. Scene 4, the storm story. Imagine a massive storm floods your home. Everything's ruined. Furniture, memories, photos. You have two choices. 1. Spend the next year talking about how unfair it was, blaming the sky, the city, the drains. 2. Accept it happened. Cry, grieve, and then get to work rebuilding. The weak wait for the storm to undo itself. The strong grab a shovel. This is not about ignoring pain. It's about refusing to be defined by it. Scene 5, the mirror and the map. The Stoic wakes up each day and asks, "What's within my control?" That question alone is life-changing. It forces you to stop wasting time on other people's behavior, luck, or injustice, and start focusing on what you can actually do today. And here's the twist: the moment you take full responsibility, you stop being a victim. You become the author. And even if you didn't write the first chapters of your life, you hold the pen now. There's a subtle kind of slavery in today's world, and it doesn't involve chains. It looks like this. Someone posts a photo and refreshes the screen every few minutes to see how many likes they got. Someone shares an idea, and the moment it's met with silence, they start second-guessing it. Someone walks into a room and instantly adjusts their tone, their posture, their personality, all for approval. That's not freedom. That's not strength. That's desperation dressed as charm. Scene 1, the mirror called others. For some people, identity is a costume closet. They change depending on who they're with. Around one person, they're tough. Around another, they soften their edges. Around authority, they shrink. Around strangers, they perform. Why? Because they don't know who they are without reflection from someone else. The Stoics would call this a loss of self, a soul scattered in the eyes of others. Seneca once said, "The approval of others is a poor substitute for self-respect." And the scary part? Most people don't even realize how addicted they've become to external approval, because it hides behind being liked, being easy to get along with, or being polite. Scene 2, the strength in silence. Now picture someone else. They walk into the same room, calm, grounded, still. They don't try to be the loudest. They don't adjust to fit in. They don't even seem to care who's watching. But you notice them. Because they're not trying. That's the paradox of power. The more you try to be impressive, the less you are. The less you need approval, the more respect you naturally earn. People can feel when you're being real. And they can definitely feel when you're not. Scene 3, the relationship trap. In relationships, this pattern becomes even more dangerous. Someone constantly asks, "Are you mad at me? Do you still love me? Was that okay? Do you think I look good? Are you sure?" Over time, that neediness doesn't bring connection, it erodes it. Because nothing is more exhausting than having to constantly reassure someone who doesn't believe in themselves. But when you're confident, when you carry a quiet sense of inner worth, people are drawn to you. Not because you're perfect, but because you're secure. And that kind of presence, it's rare. Scene 4, from needing to knowing. The Stoic doesn't ignore others. He simply doesn't depend on them. He doesn't base his worth on someone's reaction. He doesn't crumble when judged. He doesn't glow brighter when praised. Why? Because his foundation isn't made of compliments, it's made of character. That's the shift. When you move from needing validation, to knowing your values. From adjusting to please, to standing for something real. That's when you stop performing. That's when you start living. Scene 5, the inner scoreboard. Ask yourself, when you make a decision, are you thinking about how it looks? Or whether it's right? When you succeed, are you chasing applause? Or alignment with your deeper self? Marcus Aurelius said it best. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Let your life be your statement. Let your actions be your approval. Let your presence speak louder than your posts. That's the Stoic path. Not louder. Just stronger. In life, some people are not walking, they're being dragged. Dragged by their moods. Pulled by their impulses. Jerked around by every rude comment, every shift in tone, every little frustration. They say they're just being honest. They say they're sensitive or passionate. But what they're really showing the world is that they have no control. They're ruled by reaction. And according to the Stoics, nothing exposes weakness faster than this. Scene 1, the comment that ruins the day. Meet Olivia. She's hardworking, dedicated, trying to stay focused. But one day, A coworker makes a sarcastic remark about her project. She hears it, and it stings. She smiles on the outside. But for the next hour, she can't think about anything else. By lunch, she's replayed the conversation 10 times. By evening, she's texting her friends, still venting. By night, she's questioning her worth. What really happened? Someone dropped a match. And instead of letting it burn out, Olivia poured gasoline on it with her mind. Scene 2, the reactive trap. Emotional reactivity is like being a puppet, and everyone around you has strings. Someone cuts you off in traffic? You explode. Someone forgets your birthday? You spiral. Someone posts something online? You take it personally. The Stoics believed emotions are not the enemy, but reacting without pause is. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the golden line. Not stop feeling, but stop being owned by what you feel. Scene 3, power in the pause. True strength lives in the pause, that split second between stimulus and response. A Stoic doesn't numb themselves. They simply observe before they act. When something upsetting happens, they don't ask, "Why me?" They ask, "What's the most rational response here?" When someone insults them, they don't need revenge. They realize insults say more about the speaker than the listener. When emotions rise, they breathe and let the moment pass like a storm over the ocean. Calm on the surface is earned deep within. Scene 4, the fire that burns from within. There's a kind of quiet power in someone who doesn't react. It unsettles people. Because we're used to seeing sparks fly, not silence. When someone insults you and you don't flinch, they lose their weapon. When someone mocks you and you respond with calm, you win. This is not weakness. This is mastery. A reactive person is easy to manipulate. But the one who chooses their reaction, they're impossible to control. Scene 5, the master of emotion. So how do you become that person? Practice awareness. Notice your triggers before they take over. Detach from the need to always win, always be right, always defend. Remind yourself daily, your peace is more valuable than your pride. The Stoic doesn't suppress, they channel. They feel everything, but act with wisdom. They know emotion is just information. What you do with it, that's character. Blame is a drug. It feels good in the moment, but leaves you powerless. Because every time you blame the world, you give it control over your life. Weakness doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it whispers. It's not my fault. It's just how things are. I can't change it. But the Stoics taught the opposite. They believed that even if the world is unfair, your reaction is still your choice. And strength, the quiet kind, begins where excuses end. Scene 1, the excuse factory. Picture Jake. Jake lost his job. He tells everyone it's because the company was poorly managed, his boss didn't like him, and the economy is unfair. Maybe that's true. But weeks go by. Then months. He's still complaining. Still waiting. Still pointing fingers outward. What he doesn't realize is this. He's handed his future to circumstances he can't control. He's become a victim of his own story. Epictetus wrote, "Don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace." Scene 2, the shift from victim to warrior. Now meet Maya. She also lost her job. She cried, yes. She got angry, yes. But then, she asked one question. What can I do next? She didn't waste energy blaming the past. She took ownership of the future. Was it fair? No. Was it her fault? Maybe not. But was it her responsibility? Absolutely. That's the difference. The weak ask, why me? The strong ask, what now? Scene 3, life doesn't owe you anything. This truth hurts at first. No one is coming to save you. The world doesn't owe you fairness. No amount of complaining rewrites reality. But once you accept that, really accept it, you unlock something rare, freedom. Freedom to stop waiting. Freedom to take the wheel. Freedom to say, even if none of this is my fault, what I do next is. That's when life changes. That's when momentum returns. That's when strength becomes your identity, not your mask. Scene 4, small choices, big power. Responsibility isn't always about dramatic acts. Sometimes, it's about waking up early even when you're tired. Saying, I was wrong, instead of defending your ego. choosing progress over pity. The Stoic doesn't wait for ideal conditions. They act within whatever reality exists. And that's where their power lies, not in what they can't control, but in what they choose to own. Scene 5, the final mirror. So ask yourself, do I spend more time explaining my problems, or solving them? Do I wait for motivation, or act with discipline? Do I see myself as a victim, or a creator? Responsibility is the ultimate test of character. And weakness is never more exposed than when someone refuses to take it. But here's the good news. You don't need permission to change. You just need a decision. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." So if something's in your path, don't turn back. Use it. Final message. You've now seen the 3 silent behaviors that destroy self-respect. Emotional reactivity. Constant need for validation. Avoidance of responsibility. Each one weakens the soul, not in public, but in private, where your character is built. But you're not stuck. You can transform. By mastering your mind, letting go of the need to be liked, and taking full ownership of your path, you become what the Stoics called unshaken.